Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander Score studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, I've got a special tier list ranking for you with some special commanders that are, well, unique in one specific way. And when I mean one color. These are monocolor commanders, and believe me, when Wizards makes these and wants them to stand out, sometimes they gotta push pretty far, so the power levels on this list are insane. Let's jump into it. Now, a quick reminder before we jump into Finn the Fangbearer, the very first one that I'm going to be bringing up for whatever reason. I think these are in order based on mana value. Regardless, on these episodes, on these lists, they are in the vacuum of themselves, if that makes any sense. So, from the S tier down to the D tier, the best down to the worst, this is all of these commanders, these top 20 most popular monocolor commanders compared to each other, not compared to outside of the list, essentially, okay? With that said, let's jump into it. Fing, if I could talk. Finn the Fangbearer. There we go. I kind of combined both, I guess. I don't know. 1/3 Human Warrior for 2 mana in green. Death Touch. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals combat damage to a player, that player gets 2 poison counters. And of course, as we all know in Commander, the life totals double in Commander compared to other formats, but the poison counters do not. Meaning that this double infect is doubly effective, essentially. This is saying, you know what, Death Touch, if I hit you with a 1/1 like this one, or a 1-power creature, I should say, that's still 2 poison counters to you, 1/5 of your poison life total, the poison threshold to take you out. And of course, there's a good amount of low to the ground Death Touch creatures. Now, this is a strategy, a very aggressive low to the ground strategy that, yes, can take a player out super quickly. Now, how quickly can you take out the entire table? That is up for debate, depending on the power level of everything you're playing against. It is a good commander. It is a solid commander. It is probably a C tier commander. My apologies, Finn the Fangbearer. I'm not at all trying to dunk on you right now. Not at all. Please stay away from me with that axe. But essentially, this is a list. Again, we will see the power level skyrockets super quickly with this one. So, yeah, you're going to be down there in the C tier. Not the worst, but not quite middle of the road even, I don't think. Next up, Zada, Font of Hope. A 2/2 angel for 2 mana in white. Flying Vigilance. Each other angel you control enters with additional counter on it for each angel you already control. Tap for a white, only to cast an angel spell. Basically, a low to the ground mana dork for your angels, angel tribal, and essentially the wider you go, the more threatening every single angel is coming in. Angel is a pretty well supported tribe. There's a good amount of powerful angels out there. Mono white is still, and yes, it has been making some waves as of late, has been getting more support, but still, when it comes to a monocolor debate, you'd still probably put it down toward the bottom, if not the very bottom, when it comes to some things that really matter in Commander, like, you know, ramp and card advantage. It is making strides, yes, but it's not quite there compared to other monocolors. It is, okay, this is one where it's probably like a C plus B minus maybe, but again, just like looking forward and seeing like some of the commanders we've got coming up, I'm going to err on the side of caution right here, and you're going to be joining Finn the Fangbearer right there in the C tier. For now, I reserve the right to change these throughout the episode, and I very well might. Next up, Blight Paws, Emperor's Voice, a 2/2 Fox Advisor for 2 mana in white. Whenever an aura enters the battlefield under control, if you cast, you may search your life for an aura card with mana value less than or equal to that aura with a different name than that aura. Each aura you control, I should say. Put that card on the battlefield, attach Light Paws, then shuffle. I mean, the whole different name thing really doesn't matter in a game of Commander because, yeah, it's singleton, so it's kind of repetitive, but obviously in other formats that would. That being said, this is a commander that can tutor out again, and again, like a lot of very powerful things. It is, again, very specific, very limited. Auras aren't the most powerful strategy out there, obviously, but this does give you an avenue to victory by getting you specific ones. Maybe ones that can, you know, bounce back to your hand, replay, get a bunch of Enchantress effects, a bunch of Constellation effects. You are still, obviously, with all these, limited to monocolor, mono white. Again, we talked about how it's on the weaker end, but you do make up for that with like the card advantage side of tutoring with this. It is one that could potentially get out of that C tier. Again, it's like that C plus B minus, I would say, kind of with Zada. maybe slightly above it. We're gonna throw that up there right now. We're gonna put Light Paws. I'm sorry, all the Zada fans out there, and I'm probably gonna get yelled at in the comments below for that. But this can go super quick if you've got, well, the right auras to go get, and you of course do if you are tutoring for them. So maybe the B tier. All right, it's like B minus against C plus, but I'm gonna just edge out right there, and it's just gonna go right into there, and that very well might adjust. It's probably gonna adjust. It's probably gonna adjust here in a little bit. You know what? Okay, just because I feel like it's going to adjust. We're going to go to the C tier. I'm chickening out. I'm sorry, everyone. Comment below how I chickened out. Okay, next up. Magda Brazen Outlaw. Kind of similar in a way, actually, to Light Paws. A 2-1 Dwarf Berserker for 2 mana in red. Other dwarves get +1/+0. Whenever a dwarf you control comes tapped, create treasure token. Most importantly, though, sacrifice 5 treasures. Search life for an artifact or dragon card without a battlefield, then shuffle your library. The most powerful version of this is most definitely Dwarf Tribal. No, it is not. I mean, using certain dwarfs, absolutely, but yeah, just trying to make as many treasures as you can, utilizing them for ramp, and of course, utilizing them to sacrifice 5 and tutor. Yeah, you can do some pretty disgusting things. It does require a good amount of setup to get there, though. The amount of setup this requires is, yeah, make a bunch of treasures, utilize them, and tutor out, essentially. Again, yeah, sure, some dragons maybe, and actually there's some game-winning dragons that you could go get, like one that's like, hey, you know what? You got 20 more artifacts, you win the game. You're like, I'm making a bunch of treasures. Yeah, I have that. Cool. That, or yeah, some maybe combo-y artifacts, essentially. You could go get, I mean, the Basalt Monolith combinations, essentially, if you want infinite mana from there. There's probably also ways you could lock your opponents out of the game, like Mycosynth Lattice kinds of things, too. There are certain combinations of things that you can do that don't require all that many treasures to do so, and to be honest, you don't even have to play your commander until literally you're ready to go off and win, potentially. So this is one, again, I am just over-flooding this C tier right now, and I'm probably going to regret it, but you know what? It seems like another one that, again, because of the commanders, I promise we've got some commanders that are just going to blow things out of the water here in a little bit, and that eventually something will get in the D tier as well. But yes, this is a commander that, again, has the potential, has been getting better and better and better as these years have gone on, because, yeah, when this first came out, there was some treasure support out there, but not all that much compared to these days, where it's like, treasure this, treasure that, everything makes a treasure, yay! And all of a sudden now you can reliably get a good amount of treasures out with this without having to go super into Dwarf Tribal, which, again, isn't the most supported thing, and by doing that, you're able to, okay, I made a bunch of treasures, and all of a sudden, I sacrifice 10 at once, essentially, to combo off and win. That could be a way to go about it. Okay, Braids, Arisen, Nightmare, a 3/3 Nightmare for 3 mana in black. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent of that type. For each opponent who doesn't, the player loses 2 life, and you draw a card. This is a commander that is kind of the opposite of the commanders we've talked about so far, where at least some of them are kind of like more value-centric, I would say, for the last 3 we just talked about. That being said, they are value-centric. This one is punishing, essentially, the opposite side of that. And if the opponent chooses not to be punished, you do get the value in that way. So there is that push and pull, that give and take, that I'm going to get things out that I actually want to sacrifice, that maybe I'm benefited for sacrificing. For example, just something off the top of the head, like Solemn Simulacrum, okay? You actually want to sacrifice that because you actually want to be like, okay, I'll draw a card. Cool. All right, I have a way to do that. Now, my opponents probably don't have things they actually want to sacrifice. So, again, they have to sacrifice an artifact or creature in that example. If they don't, I get extra value out of them not doing that. If they do, yeah, they are down that. This one is, it is tough because, I mean, I think that there's one, in my opinion, that's kind of clearly at the bottom, and like, hey, is this one, it's very dependent. It's a very dependent commander. Oh, goodness. Do you go down to the bottom too, Braids, as well? Do you go down to the bottom? I don't know. I think, it could be like, it's here or here, okay? It's like a D plus C minus, I think. I mean, it is dependent kind of on your opponents not having certain strategies, because certain opponents are like, oh yeah, I just have a token deck, and I've got a bunch of creatures in play, and I'm fine with sacrificing whatever. Or if I'm playing against aristocrat-style deck, I actually benefit them, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, sacrifice things. And they're like, oh, thank you, yes, I will. I appreciate that. There are certain strategies that can really hamper this one. Yeah, the card advantage is nice when you do get it, but again, if opponents aren't giving you that, then it's just like, okay, all right. Yeah, I'm gonna keep that in D tier for now, okay? Next up, Omnath, Locus of Mana. I am very sorry, Omnath. I am very, very, very sorry, Omnath, but you're the first one that when I saw this list, I'm like, yeah, it's probably a D tier commander compared to all the other ones in this. It's a 1/1 elemental for 3 mana in green. You don't lose unspent green mana as steps in phases end. gets +1 for each unspent mana you have. Now, this is a really cool commander. It's a Voltron commander where it's like, all right, I dump a bunch of mana in this. I've got like a mana bank in a way with it. But all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, I've got my mana bank. Now what? Now what do I do? Like, I've got this mana bank. Okay, cool. Like, do I spend the mana to make my commander slightly smaller? Or do I keep all the mana in there so I can swing? The problem is, too, like, when you don't spend that mana and then, like, an opponent takes this out, like, on their turn, and you're like, oh, I don't have any, like, instants to use that mana on, so I guess I just lose all that mana that I banked up just to pump my commander. And, of course, there's other ways to pump as well. But yeah, overall, like, Voltron isn't the most, it's not the most impactful strategy. Typically, it's kind of very all in. And yeah, when it works out, great. When it doesn't work out, it's like, oh no, yeah, I just lose. I just lose. Moving on. Imitating the Pyrro Hammer. You know what else is a strategy that doesn't really work in Commander? Burn. Except for when you have a commander that actually focuses on it in a really cool way. If you just typically went with like any commander, you're like, you know what? I'm going to throw a bunch of lightning bolts in the deck. It's probably not going to work in Commander where there's 120 life you need to take out basically in total versus, again, in most formats, 20. All right, 4/4 Human Knight for 4 mana in red. Whenever an instant source spell you control that targets only a single creature deals damage to that creature, deals that much damage to each opponent. So yeah, Lightning Bolt now, instead of dealing 3 total damage, is basically dealing 12. Again, 3 to that creature and 3 to each opponent's faces. So that can really add up quickly, especially when you add in other damage doubling, damage tripling effects. Now, how effective is this? You know, again, like, you really got to go hard into burn. You got to go super hard into individual target spells that deal damage and hoping you can take your opponents out very, very quickly with them. This commander is, I mean, again, 4 mana. So 3 mana, I would say, like, 1, 2, 3 is kind of like low to the ground commander when it comes to the amount of mana you need to spend on them. 4 mana, 5 mana is kind of where it's like, okay, middle of the road commander when it comes to mana value. 6+ is like, okay, that thing better be doing some absolutely absurd things for, you know, the cost of it to kind of be up there. Imitating the Pyrro Hammer is, again, that middle of the road, like, kind of on the cusp of being, like, lower end when it comes to mana value, but not quite. Yeah, this is one where it's like, okay, you know, burn is, like, good, but, like, not that, I mean, it's good. It's good with this commander, but, like, again, it's still a strategy that's not quite there compared to some of these other commanders. I don't think so. I do think this one's going to be probably in the D tier. Maybe Braids should be moved up, actually. We're going to stick with it for now. We're going to stick with it for now, and I promise we're going to get to some, whoops, there we go. Promise we're going to get to some of the commanders on the upper side of this list, all right? Imotech the Stormlord. Not quite there just yet, though. All right, 3/3 Necron for 4 mana in black. Whenever one of our artifact cards leave your graveyard, create 2/2 black Necron warrior artifact creature tokens. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target artifact creature control is +2/+2 against Menace until end of turn. I mean, this is cool. It's like, all right, yeah, okay, I'll mill myself. I'll get, you know, things in my graveyard, get artifacts in my graveyard, and exile them or bring them back to my hand or whatnot. Get them to leave the graveyard here, there, or everywhere, and make a bunch of 2/2s. Cool. The whole, like, you know, all right, +2/+2 Menace, not all that impactful overall. It requires a good amount of setup. It is very specific on what it wants to do. I'm going to say it's a D tier commander. You know what? We're going to be moving Braids up. We're going to move Braids up. That one feels like it's on a different tier than the other ones, okay? All right, moving on. Cronco, my boss. The most popular out of all the monocolor commanders. I guess I don't have these like in order of popularity, but Cronco is, I believe, the 4th most popular commander right now, which is crazy because, again, I don't think any other monocolor commander actually cracks the top 20 even. Cronco was the only one really holding down the fort there. 3/3 Goblin Warrior for 4 mana in red. Tap, create X1/1 red Goblin creature tokens, or X the number of goblins you control. This one can get out of control in absolutely no time. There are a lot of goblins out there. Again, we talked about how, like, Angels, a very supported tribe. Goblins is on a different level than that. Goblins has an absurd amount of support. And also, I mean, yeah, you can lean incredibly heavily into goblins. We're also getting more impact tremors type cards up there. We have Purphoros, we have other ones as well, just like the new Offspring one as well. But being able to just be like, okay, I tap Cronco, and all of a sudden I deal 20 damage to everyone's faces. Yeah, Imodane, eat your heart out, essentially. But also, yeah, okay, I've got this, like, threaten effect that untaps my commander, and I do it again. Yeah, by do it again, I mean, like, now I'm making 40. You're just doubling up your army every single time. This is one of those commanders that's, like, so simple, but so effective. It is just incredibly straightforward. It's like, okay, tap, make more goblins. Got it, okay. Next turn, tap, make twice as many of the goblins. Okay, next turn. Now quadruple. It's going to an absurd rate once you get going. Yeah, you could literally just chuck like every single threaten effect, and I've done that before. Every single threaten effect you can essentially find with a Cronco deck, and you're like, okay, some ramps, some threaten effects, and I have a very effective deck because I can make an absurd amount of creature tokens in no time at all. We're gonna go with a B tier commander for all of those reasons. Moving on. Myal Shi, Shield of Argive, a 3/4 human soldier for 4 mana in white. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. Okay. It's quite nice to shut things down on your turn. That can lead to certain combo aspects potentially because your opponents can't stop a combo if they can't cast spells on your turn or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. I mean, there are like certain circumstances where they would be able to do something, I guess. I'm probably not thinking of one right now, but like if they have a land that can stop you, oh no! Actually, could Morph get around that? I don't know. It's like a special action, but it still is an ability, I think. Or is it just a special action? Let me know in the comments below, rules lawyers out there. Regardless, sure, a combo aspect could be that, but more so it's just like, okay, with mono white, there's only so many like, gotcha combos. But still. With this one, though, whenever it attacks, create X 1/1 color soldier artifact creature tokens, where X the number of soldiers you control. Soldier is, again, like, it's kind of weird when you have, like, soldiers, warriors, knights. It's like all these things that, like, you can't really remember. Okay, does that one, does deploy to the front, does that make soldiers? I think it's soldiers. Oh, okay, does that other one secure the waist? What is, I think that makes warriors. It's like, if you had all three of those together, the amount of support that it would have, like if it was like a soldier, warrior, knight, it was like, okay, yeah, it would have so much support. It's spread out though, and the cards are kind of random. Not random, but they are not as concentrated as you would think when it comes to support for it. There's also not like a lot of lords for soldiers, really, overall, too. So like when it comes to support of goblins versus this is less supported than Gobos. On top of that, Gobos with Cronco, it's like, okay, it's a tap ability, meaning you don't have to send Cronco into danger, and also you can definitely get more than, you know, more than one activation, even more than two sometimes in the same turn. This one is on attack. You're also in mono white. You don't really have ways to get extra combats as well. It's a solid commander. It is kind of like the Cronco of mono white, but still, again, because of those reasons I listed, it is a commander that is more of a, in this list, C tier commander compared to Cronco, which I am saying is a B tier. Moving on. Or XNL Deepest Might. A 4/4 god with trample for 4 mana in red. If a red source you control will deal an amount of non-combat damage less than or XNL's power to each opponent, that source deals damage equal to its power instead. You flip it over, and essentially it says, once it dies, flips over into Temple of Power. It can tap for a red, pay 200 red, tap, transform it. Only for red source you control dealt 4 or more non-combat damage this turn, only as a sorcery. This is a commander where your goal is like, okay, pump the power of this commander and all of a sudden have those repeat ping effects for your opponents. Again, like those like, hey, on your upkeep, take a damage or whatever it is, or whenever you do this, take a damage, or that, take a damage. Casting instant sorceries, whenever I do that, like a gutter snipe type effect, take some damage as well. Yeah, so if you can get this commander's power up there, it can deal a lot of damage. I mean, yeah, you can do a lot of damage with all of your things. It's kind of like Immodane-ish. But to me, instead of like being like targeted single removal, it's like group slug type. So it's like repeatable effects. You're not like depending on, okay, I use my resource, I hope it works out. Like, I hope I deal enough damage to like work it out. This one's like, okay, you use your resources repeatedly because it's like, okay, I get them in play. They keep dealing out damage whenever I'm doing things. And also if I can focus on pumping this instead of like, you know, utilizing like burn spells, I can actually deal more and more and more and more and more. On top of that, this actually is somewhat hard to deal with again because like when it gets taken out, it flips back over. So again, this does require a good amount of setup. Again, I'm just ending up with a lot in the C tier right now though, but I feel like that is also a C tier commander. Okay, now we are stepping things up quite a bit, I promise, for the rest. Here we go. Orvar the All-Form. This is a crazy powerful commander. That is just kind of funny because it's basically Mistform Ultimus and they just slapped on so much more. All right, a 3/3 shapeshifter with changeling for 4 mana in blue. That is literally just Mistform Ultimus, essentially, right? That is the exact same thing, I'm pretty sure. That being said, so much more because it says, well, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if it targets one or more other permanents you control, create a token that's a copy of one of those permanents. This is an absurd effect. This is an absolutely insane effect. This is literally, hey, do you have just any spells out there that just target, just happen to target? Doesn't matter what else they do. It doesn't matter. It's like, okay, yeah, that like makes something into a snow permanent until end of turn. Oh, cool. Why would I ever use that like in any deck? Oh, because Orvar's like, did it target? And you're like, yes. Okay, clone it. Doesn't matter what it is, clone it. Could be a land, could be a, I mean, there are certain lands out there that you actually really want to copy, and actually copying lands can be a very powerful thing. Could be a land, could be a mass mana generator, could be something with an incredible ETB, a game-changing ETB, could be a combo piece. Like, you can do some absolutely insane things with this. Things, again, you shouldn't have extra copies of certain things. You're like, yeah, I can just easily like, oh, 1 mana, cool, extra copy. Oh, by the way, I've got like a buyback on this too, so I can like bring it back to my hand. Oh, and here's a combo because I'm making mana every single time I'm doing so. This is an incredibly powerful commander, and I just said all that, and I'm about to put it in the D tier. No, just kidding. A tier is where I'm going to be putting it because of a specific reason coming up here very shortly. But yeah, this is a commander where it's like, you know what? Quite crazy. It is just, its power level is just insane. It is an insane powerful commander. It's just not quite to the top because of a specific reason here in a little bit that you might already be guessing if you're looking ahead. Okay, regardless, if you've never played against an Orvar deck, take it out because they are incredibly powerful. Moving on. Shieldred the Apocalypse. Okay, another disgusting commander. Another commander that's like, ha, you know what? You just lose for playing the game. 4/5 for Phyrexian Praetor for 4 mana in black. Death Touch. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. When an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. What do you like to do in Magic? Ramp and draw cards. Too bad. Now you can only ramp without getting punished. Okay, yeah. I mean, then you play Polluted Bonds, you punish them further anyways. That being said, what's going to be happening with this one is, hey, you draw cards, which you like to do in Commander. All of a sudden, you are getting drained a lot. Also, I am drawing a lot of cards. Now, luckily for pretty much everyone existing except for people who have a Shielder deck, there's only so many ways to kind of like wheel in mono black. Like, you have like certain ways, like what is it, Teferi's Puzzle Box or whatever, like you've got, or that one like Dark Deal or whatever. There's only so many ways to wheel. If this was also in blue, it'd be like, oh my gosh, that is insane, because the game would just end in no time at all. This still can end very quickly, and in fact, there are certain combos with this too, where it's like, hey, draw a ton of cards and you lose. Yay! Or like doubling up the amount of life lost on opponents with this is just crazy as well. Literally, drawing a card takes 1/10 of your life away. Already takes away 1/20. It's a very, 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 very powerful commander. And again, it benefits you whenever you're drawing cards as well, and there's some gross things that you can do with that too. So yeah, this is one where, again, it is an A-tier commander in my opinion. It is just absolutely gross. If this is the table, I need to take it out. But not before I take out Urza, Lord High Artificer. Yeah, the kind of like high bar for a commander being pushed and overpowered really came about first with this one, which I believe was Modern Horizons. The first one, I think, is when that actually came out. It was like, you gotta be kidding me, right? And I was like, no, this is real. You're not kidding me. You're not kidding me. This is just like a different level of commander that we had never really seen before. And this is what we got. A 1/4 Human Artificer for 4 mana in blue. Enters the battlefield, creating a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token. With this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Tap an untapped artifact you control, add blue. Let me say it one more time. Tap an untapped artifact you control, add blue. Every single one of your artifacts, even if it's a token, non-token, is basically a Mox. I mean, it's basically Mox Sapphire. You are essentially just getting free mana out of everything you have, and you can tap those right away. So again, that construct that you are making, again, yes, is summoning sick. Doesn't matter. You can tap it right away as if it's a hasty mana dork, because again, it's Urza that has the ability. Again, it says tap an untapped artifact. It doesn't say your artifacts have tap. Because of that, again, you can tap them right away. So you can flood the board with a ton of token artifacts or play a bunch of 0 mana artifacts. You can just like grab a bunch of go to your artifact pile of cards that you have. Take a giant chunk of the ones that cost like 1 or less and just throw them in an Urza deck, and you're probably going to do some pretty crazy bonkers things. Because it's not done just yet. Pay 5, shuffle your library, exile the top card, and until the end of turn you may play that card without paying its mana cost. Also, you just have spin the wheel, hit something massive. Oh, I hit Omniscience, I win. Yay! I mean, yeah, this is the kind of commander which just, again, it literally gives you the absurd mana generation and the way to dump it into a mana sink that you're just like, okay, I win the game if I hit the right thing, essentially. You don't even need to do that. There's, of course, combos that work well with this, too. It's just an absurd commander. On top of being able to make, like, a very substantial army of constructs quite easily with blink effects as well, that can get really, 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 really beefy to take your opponents out. So yeah, Urza, Lord High Officer, is kind of the high bar when it comes to commanders. It is an S tier commander that is just gross, just insane. My goodness, Wizards, when you made that, it's like, my goodness, what are you doing? Okay, next up, Zada, Hedron, Grinder. I love Zada. Zada is a commander that is getting more and more and more potent, and players might not realize just how potent it is getting until it's too late. A 3/3 Goblin ally for 4 mana in red. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Zada, Hedron, Grinder, copy that spell for each other creature you control. Spell could target, each targets a different one of those creatures. This is one that is getting more potent because, again, we talked about earlier with like Magda and treasures and how that has actually increased Magda's power. This one's like, hey, you know what about Magda? Yeah, you also are getting like specific cards that are like, hey, target creature, blah, make a treasure. Like, target creature gets +2/+0 in first strike. Cool. But also make a treasure. And because of that, again, you can go wide very quickly with this. You can have a lot of dedicated resources like Dragon's Fodder type of cards. But okay, I make a bunch of creature tokens. I go wide. And then all of a sudden, I cast one spell that targets Zada. And then it targets everything. And it basically kind of is like a storm type effect. It's like, okay, my entire army gets +2/+0, and I make 10 treasures. So all of a sudden, you just turn that little pump effect into a mass ritual effect, and now you have 8 extra mana to play with, on top of the 2 mana dispense. You have 2 mana back. Anyways, you know what I mean. And then you cast a simple, like, 1 mana spell, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, this one just, like, makes it so my creature can't block until I'm turning your opponent's like, why do you cast that? Oh, it also draws me a card. So then I draw 10 more cards. Then I cast another card, and this one's gonna, like, double up my army, essentially. So I just double up my army. Now I have 20 creatures. And then I cast another card that draws me 20 cards, because I targeted Zada. Then I cast another thing that gives me all the treasures in the world. Yes, it requires some setup, but yeah, it is gross once you get things going, and it can be basically like a weird storm ritual go wide strategy in a way, but once it works, and it can take players out. Again, it is one that when I built it years and years and years ago, I think it was one of my first episodes on this channel, it was still potent back then and could really surprise players out of nowhere. But this has gotten so much more potent again because of those targeted treasure creating spells. There's also other ritual effects that work with it too, but still, targeting treasure creating spells are gross with this commander. Once it gets going, it's hard to stop. It to me is probably like, it is like a high mark on the C tier probably. It is probably a high mark on the C tier. Oh, it's just kind of tough. There's just kind of like like all these are like right in there. There's gotta be. I mean, there are other ones up here coming up close that are going to be getting in there, but yeah, okay. We're moving on. I'm sorry, Zada. I could not get you in the B tier with all of that right there, but you are a very, very, again, this list is incredibly powerful. Okay, this list has incredibly powerful heavy hitters. Meronar, I apologize, is a good one. It's not quite there, though. A 2/3 rat rogue for 5 mana in black. All rats have fear. Tap, sacrifice a rat, put X rat creature tokens on the battlefield where X is the number of rats you control. This is basically rat Cronco in a way. That being said, there are some slight adjustments. Rats having fear can be great because it's like your army is unblockable in a way, which is quite nice and a great way to take them out. You are going down in rats every single time you do that, though. I mean, every single time you have to tap this, sacrifice a rat. So you are going down 1, which again is basically like kind of like 2 each time, kind of, because you're not making an extra 1 for it. Instead, you're going down. So it does kind of the exponential growth for Cronco. It's still a lot with this one, but it is still slightly less. And it does take longer to get this one going. You can't just like tap this right away. You need to have other rats in play to really get the most out of this, right? That being said, obviously, once it gets going, go really, really, really good. Really, really, really fast. And, yeah, if you have, like, all the Relentless Rats type decks or Rat Colony type decks or whatever with this one, you can do some crazy things with it, too. That being said, it doesn't have all the untap effects that, you know, again, Cronco does have because it doesn't have those threaten effects. There's not really that many ways to untap in mono black. If you were in blue, if you were in, actually, literally, if you were in any other color, you'd have ways to untap this more consistently. Again, green has, like, untap all your creatures or untap specific creature types effects. Blue and white basically have a lot of like untapped permanent effects as well, or untapped creatures too. And then red again has threaten effects. Mono black doesn't really have those. So again, you are more dependent upon like actually getting rats in play, sacrificing them, and then utilizing this at a slightly slower pace. Again, so this one is probably more in the C tier. Again, it does give you that evasion. God, the C tier is just getting super, super flooded right now. But again, it just, sometimes that happens. Sometimes that happens. Okay, next up. Turrid God of Fright, or as I like to say, Turrid God of Salt, a 4/5 god with Menace for 5 mana in black. When opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard on the battlefield under control. On the backside, if you have infinite mana, you win. Turrid's Lantern. Let your artifact for 4 mana in black. Tap, target player loses 2 life and let it sacrifice a non-land permanent, discard a card. And of course, pay 3 in a black, untap it. So if you can, again, dump infinite mana in there, you just win the game. That being said, the front side is just already disgusting. This is basically It That Betrays in the command zone, but better in just 5 mana instead of whatever It That Betrays is 11, 12, whatever it is. Yeah, it's gross. So this is just absolutely an absurd commander that essentially you just need like to cast one effect and you might just win the game. If you just get this out and you're like, okay, I cast a spell and everyone discards 3 cards or discards their entire hand or sacrifice all the things on the board. I get all those things and everyone else is now really, really hurt and has nothing and I just win. Like this can just be, it gets out and play, you do that and you win. It is not to Urza level, but it is at the tier underneath that, joining Orvar in Shieldred. It is a disgustingly amazing and disturbing, and I wish they never printed it kind of a commander. Sorry, Turrid fans out there. Next up, Zuladak Void Gorger, a 7/4 Eldrazi for 6 mana in colorless. And yes, I guess I should say this is a monocolor list, but again, if you look on EDA Trek, it does like actually have under monocolor, like colorless technically counts as monocolor, even though it's not a color. Give me a break, okay? Anyway, Zuladak Void Gorger, 7/4 Eldrazi. Color spells you cast from your hand with mana value 7 or greater have Cascade. Basically Cascade Plus, right? Joke? No? Okay. Anyways, yeah, free value off the top of your library when you cast your big colorless spells, including, of course, Eldrazi. Yes, you have an absurd amount of high-powered cards that you're like, oh, I get even more high-powered things into play. Once this gets going, things get crazy. Of course, you can really lean into some very efficient ramp because you are in colors. You don't have to worry about any mana fixing. You're just like, okay, get the most efficient ramp out there, chuck this in the deck, get a bunch of big things out very, very quickly. If I hit certain things off the top of my library, I'm probably just going to win the game just for hitting, you know, the right 2 things right away. It is an incredibly powerful approach. You are limited compared to the other monocolors that you have the least, you know, the smallest pool of cards, I should say. But still, it's very, very, very effective. I'm going to go with a B tier commander. Cronco gets a friend. Okay, moving on. I never know how to say this name. Carrick Crick, son of Yawgmoth, however you say it. 2/2 Phyrexian Horror Minion for 7 mana in black. But you probably never pay that. You usually just pay 4 and 6 life. Because it has Phyrexian mana and those mana symbols, but also has Phyrexian black can be paid with either black or 2 life. Yeah, no, that's just kind of reminding you of that. But what it does say is lifelink for each black and a cost, you may pay 2 life by that mana. Does that sound familiar? Because it's basically the exact same thing as that reminder text. So essentially, all of your black pips in your deck now essentially are just Phyrexian black. And that includes not just the cost on the card, but hey, you know what? Activated abilities as well. And there are certain combos and crazy things that you can do with that where you shouldn't be able to do that, but now you can. On top of that, whenever you cast a black spell, you get a counter on Crick Son of Yawgmoth. I kind of forget about that, but essentially it's like, okay, cool. I slightly grow my commander. It's got lifelink. I can gain some of that life back. Yeah, there's other more disgusting things to do with this. When you are cheating on mana cost, that is a pretty powerful thing. Sure, at the cost of life, but life's a resource in commander. You got plenty of it, right? You can utilize it. I'd say this one, its potential is A tier. It is a very, very, very powerful commander. Again, cheating on mana value, doing certain combo-y things as well. Yeah, it's definitely up there with the likes of, again, Orvar, Turrid, and Shieldred. Finally, though, Kozilek, the Great Distortion. 12/12 Eldrazi for 10 mana in total in colorless. When you cast Kozilek, the Great Distortion, if you got fewer than 7 cards in hand, draw cards equal the difference. Menace, discard a card, converting mana cost X. Counter target spell, converting mana cost X. Basically, hey, I'm a giant, beefy, heavy-hitting Eldrazi. I'm a 2-shot KO. When you cast me, I give you back your whole hand, essentially, all right? Again, you had no cards in hand. Great. Here's your whole hand. You have a whole hand. Also, you can discard things to actually protect me. You can just counter things out of nowhere. Again, free countering things. That's amazing. Menace, it can get through certain times just on opponents who don't have 2 creatures to block with, essentially. And of course, yeah, again, if you get double strike, again, it is a 1-shot KO quite easily. Or either like Hedron, what's that? There's one Hedron Matrix or whatever it is that gives like plus X based on its mana value as well. So that's another way. There's ways to get this into a 1-shot KO territory. It is quite a bit of mana, but again, like once you invest in it, if you just like go super hard on ramping, cool. I ramp super hard. All right. I cast my commander. Oh no, I have no cards in my hand. Now I have all the cards in my hand again. It's up there. It is. I feel like there's a glut of commanders, and maybe I need to make some adjustments right here, but this is like, again, like probably a B. It's probably a B. It's probably like a C plus B minus. I feel like there's a lot. Again, like in this area right here between B and C, there's a ton. There's a ton of commanders between this area where it's like the lines are a bit blurred. Maybe I adjust things ever so slightly in here. Maybe light pause moves up because of the tutoring aspect and just how gross that can get. Oh, someone's gonna be commenting, no, don't do that. Don't do that right now. I mean, maybe this one moves up a little bit too, but all right, we're gonna keep it where it's at right now, okay? It's okay that things can be a little bit bottom heavy sometimes as well. Again, I do think that there is kind of like there is this not giant discrepancy, I'd say, but like, yeah, the power level of an Urza compared to like the bottom level with like an Omnath, there's quite the gap between them when it comes to like having to break through as a monocolor commander when it comes to popularity. Again, this is the top 20 most popular monocolor commanders right now. Like, absurd power, yeah, Urza, Orvar, Shieldred, Turrid, and Crick, those are all absurd power. Then you've got like, okay, like just a mainstay like Cronco, which is very powerful, but also just like, yeah, super simple. Players can, it can be a very good beginner commander too, because like you're just like, okay, get in there. Or if you just say Goblin fan, great, you've got a Goblin commander. You also have like big heavy helding Eldrazi. You've got like, okay, tutoring for auras. But then you've got kind of like a just mix of, yeah, does really interesting things, different aspects, different things that like, again, like, okay, make a bunch of treasures, like utilize those to tutor things. You've got like, okay, non-combat damage specific things, absurd Zada things, but it's a good mix of commanders, I should say. And because of that, yeah, there is kind of, again, a top tier, ones that really stand out. And then, yeah, just kind of a more muddle lower tiers, I would say, with that. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on all of these. Where am I right? Where am I wrong? Am I completely wrong about this, tier ranking list? Or do you think I'm pretty close? So yeah, let me know about that. And let me know what of your favorite monocolor commanders did actually make this list. What's actually a really cool monocolor commander that, well, isn't quite popular enough to get on this list because this is the top 20. But yeah, probably would be up there toward the top if it was. And with that, this episode is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. In the comments below, let me know your thoughts are on this episode. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.